With YouTube demonetizing independent media, please consider becoming a patron today for just $1 per month. Link below. Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Matt Jarbo, and I'm here today with Jeremy, aka Magog of Morskar.
What's
Thanks
up?
for what's going on. Thanks for joining me. So now you haven't seen Solo: A Star Wars Story,
Not yet. No.
so you're coming at this completely cold. But
Yes.
as the title here says, as Solo: A Star Wars Story flops, are movies about white men box office poison? And since you and I cover a lot with the whole identity politics thing, I thought it'd be fun to kind of go through a little bit of this article to see just how Scott Mendelson, a contributor for Forbes, is wrong.
Really?
Because this is now the narrative. This is now how they're spinning things with this movie not doing well at the box office. I'm not too sure if you followed a lot of the hoopla surrounding the movies over the last 6 months,
Oh
but
yeah.
all things considered, the reason why Star Wars or why Solo flopped at the box office this weekend, it wasn't even really a flop. It just didn't gross as much as they wanted. Has pretty much everything to do with Deadpool opening last weekend, and that Memorial Day weekend hasn't done well for anything since like 2014. So it's
Right.
it's just been a bad weekend, and Disney wanted it because of the 41st anniversary of the franchise, and that's it. And that's where we find ourselves right now. So asking the question if a white man is box office poison. Now it says here that Star Wars, a solo Star Wars story, may struggle to pass the $248 million opening weekend of The Force Awakens, and maybe if things go south, the $220 million debut of The Last Jedi. If it had cost less, or performed better overseas, this would have been a different conversation. Plenty of big movies earned the over under 200 million and went on to do 550 million to 800 million worldwide business. But Solo isn't Spectre, Pirates 5, or Fast and Furious 6. Well, no, it's not. This is an origin story of a very beloved character.
Yeah, and it's not one of the main franchise movies, so why they expect it to do as good as
Exactly.
the main storylines. Everybody wants to see the main storylines and see where that goes, and how the universe is going to evolve. This is another, Rogue One. It's another origin.
Well, Rogue One ties directly into A New Hope, so it's kind of like a side story, an ancillary tale, or or just a side story right to one of the episodes, or the first episode, really. And so people wanted to see, even though they already knew the outcome, they still wanted to see how it happened. This was
Yeah.
an entirely original thing. This was an origin story for a character, so there was a lot of back and forth over it as it was. But again, it's a lot of it has to do with simply the weekend that it came out. Now, it goes on to say that it is ironic that the first failure of the new Star Wars era is one with a white guy in the starring role. Moreover, Solo: A Star Wars Story tanked harder overseas than in North America. We are comedically past the point where anyone should still believe the conventional wisdom about minority-led movies or female-led movies struggling overseas. While I'm not going to argue that the overseas audiences are drawn into big movies starring women and minorities more than the standard white guy, he's the special hero's journey, they sure don't seem to find them repelling either. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, like, okay, so obviously, like, and he'll go on to this next paragraph. We'll talk more about, like, giving examples. But in regards to, like, let's say Black Panther, Black Panther was the 18th movie in a franchise. Okay, the character had been introduced nearly 2 years prior, and it was a big lead in. It was leading into Avengers Infinity War. It was part of a larger narrative, part of a larger story.
Right.
It was an episode. That's what it was. It was a big part of this episode. And we were getting the next episode only a few months later. Well, episode 8, The Last Jedi, wasn't leading in to Solo. I mean, there were connections between the two, albeit kind of dumb, but there was ultimately, that was it. It was just a tangential connection via a prop, and that was the entire thing. Here you've got, like even like last year you had Beauty and the Beast, a $1.1 billion box office take home in March, but that was a remake of a very beloved animated film, and it happened just to do, it was serviceable because it was basically almost a shot for shot remake.
Right.
These movies are, it's like trying to say that it's oh, white guys are poison. The examples that he's going to give here are probably going to end up having a lot of other things added onto them that would end up explaining why they were as successful as they were. And I don't want to try to say that these movies are not successful because of who's starring in them. I do think that the definitely is a draw there, and that's totally fine with me.
I think people are a little disenfranchised with new Star Wars too. We've already seen numbers drop from the last Star Wars film, and now Solo comes out, and people were excited about it. But I don't know anybody who saw the trailer for Solo and was like, "Damn white people!"
Yeah, I mean, I know people that
Like
saw
it
the
didn't
trailer.
happen.
I saw people saw the trailer, the first one at least, and they were like, "Well, that kind of looks shitty," and I agreed. It didn't look very good to me. The movie had its own amount of problems, obviously, that led into its overall review rating and whatnot. But the fans seem to like it. It has an A on CinemaScore, which, if you're unfamiliar with CinemaScore, it's when they have people outside of theaters in high traffic areas, and they ask them what they think of the movie, and they ask them like a sliding scale of questions. And then they compile the data, and that's how they get the metric. It's actually like the one true metric Hollywood goes by. Right. So it goes on to say here that Tomb Raider made $215 million overseas versus $56 million domestic, which I liked Tomb Raider, but it came out in March, which is not always the best month for video game movies, and video game movies never really do that well anyway. But at least Vikander did a good job. Moonlight made more overseas than in North America. It didn't make much in North America, but still went on to win Best Picture. Wonder Woman made $409 million overseas, while Black Panther made $646 million in foreign grosses, more than any other solo superhero flick, save for Iron Man 3, and if it counts Captain America: Civil War. Well, Wonder Woman coming off of Batman v Superman, right? And people wanting a Wonder Woman movie, and it tied into the larger DCEU. Again, there was an introduction of the character. She probably would have still done very well in her own solo film had there not been the Batman v Superman tie-in. And same with Black Panther, but I think those little teases really helped open up the movie, because then it wasn't like necessarily an origin movie Wonder Woman it absolutely was, but Black Panther it wasn't. But it still introduced audiences to those characters to the point of where they, could relate and could get excited.
Right.
Whereas,
Wonder Woman was the most successful of all the DCs.
It was, yeah, 800. I think it was like 800 plus million worldwide is what it pulled in.
Right.
And it's a good movie.
Yeah, it was all right. I think here Scotty would be like, but she fell in love with a white man.
Yeah, who apparently has popped up. And they're filming the sequel right now, and apparently Chris Pine has popped up. So it's like, okay, I wonder how that's gonna go. Yeah. But then you've got Pixar's Coco earned $805 million worldwide, including a record $189 million in China. Pixar hasn't had a non-sequel hit starring a white guy since 2009's masterpiece Up. It's no accident that Elastigirl is getting the superhero spotlight in Incredibles 2. Well, I mean, the thing with The Incredibles 2 is it takes place immediately following the events of The Incredibles. And so the first one was all about Mr. Incredible. This one's about Elastigirl. It does kind of make sense that it's like they're focusing on another character. Yeah, that's fine.
They're like, let's do the Mr. Mom storyline.
Exactly. And Mr. Mom dealing with a son with powers, while trying to run everything. So it's going to be running that storyline, which is again showing fathers. I love that he's kind of saying here, it's no accident that Elastigirl is actually getting the superhero spotlight. But if you watch the trailer for Incredibles 2, it really is about Mr. Incredible being a stay-at-home dad.
Right.
That's what a lot of the jokes are. So that's still going to end up, I think, where the predominant focus of the film is. Then you've also got Pixar. Up, 2009, an old geezerly white dude who's angry at everything, clearly is the last time it's happened. But at the same time, Pixar doesn't make that a primary focus, right? Like, right. What was after that? You had Brave in like 2012, I think, which was, a white Irish girl, or okay, that was fine. But then Cars.
Cars 3, and then like Frozen came out after Up.
Frozen was Disney, Walt Disney Animation. It's not Pixar.
Oh.
It's easy to get that mixed up. But yeah, like The Good Dinosaur. There was Inside Out, which focused on like the characters inside the girl's head.
Right,
and again, it was a little white girl that they were in the head of. And again, none of that really matters to me because it wasn't a primary focus of the story in terms of like trying to demonize another gender. It was just there. And I think that's where you find success here is when it's not beaten over the head. It's not made into being this. When they lay out the identity politics in front of it, it just becomes this moment of like, I'm losing interest because now you're taking something that probably isn't political and you're making it political. Like Scott Mendelson here is the person who's making this, political.
Yeah, and Scotty doesn't know.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Scotty doesn't know. This is not. This is a movie he didn't like, and because he didn't like it, he applies his politics to it. If he had loved the movie, he wouldn't have wrote this article.
Well, he does say that he thought it was okay, but we're going to skip past the rest of everything he says because it goes on for a while. But just to talk about the last paragraph here. So, because he gives a whole bunch of other like examples of how he thinks he's right. It says, in the end, Solo had little to offer that was fresh and little to sell beyond being a movie that happened to be part of the Star Wars universe. But in 2018, an event movie featuring a generic white guy in the lead is much less of an event movie, and merely being a big budget fantasy spectacle isn't enough. Given certain demographics, a still too rare opportunity to root for heroes that look like them can help create demographically specific event films. Thus, from a certain point of view, the white male movie stars may indeed be box office poison.
Oh, God.
And I don't agree with that because it's like Solo is this, it's not a new character. It's not like a character that hasn't been in the lexicon of pop culture for 41 years. It's not like this is just some random, person. Is he going to make the same argument for Indiana Jones 5?
Yeah, I don't think there's a ton of other metrics too. There's a reason movies do huge money overseas compared to back home, here in America. And that's because I honestly think that going to the movies is not the top of everybody's list of things to do anymore. I mean, movie theaters are struggling.
Oh yeah.
Streaming services and digital downloads and how you can get the movie like 2 months after it's come out anyway. Like once it's had its run in the theaters, they they pretty much have the digital copy ready to rent or buy on Amazon or whatever have you pretty fast. I remember the days where you had to wait a year before that fucker would come out on VHS. Like,
yep. Yep.
these things changing the dynamic of how we in America imbibe movies. And a perfect example of that was Dredd. Dredd didn't do that well in theaters because it came out at the same time as some other bigger movie. But then it turned around and it's like DVD and downloads were like off the fucking charts.
Well, with Dredd, it also had to do with poor marketing from Lionsgate. They just said Dredd 3D and like had the one poster and that was about it. And they just didn't. But you're also you're correct. It on home video, the movie's done gangbusters. I've bought it for people. There's literally a day every year, it's in September, called Dredd Day, where you go buy a copy of Dredd for somebody who doesn't have a copy of Dredd.
Right. Yeah, I mean, but that's just one example. I mean, we have seen time and time again that Netflix and Amazon and all that is kicking ass and taking names in America, but overseas people are still going to theaters.
Well, and then that's the thing too, is overseas, Netflix is buying the rights to some of these things and preventing them from going to theaters overseas.
Right.
So like Cloverfield Paradox and Annihilation, both Paramount films, were purchased by Netflix overseas. And well, Cloverfield Paradox also played here, but Annihilation came out here in theaters, but overseas it went to Netflix only. And so that's the whole point, is like they are kicking butt over there because the international market are looking for different things. Like Pacific Rim did really well in China, the first one, because it was giant robots. Other movies have done well in other countries. When it comes to China, which becomes this big, topic of conversation, when Star Wars tanked in China because it doesn't have that history, doesn't have that 40 years of built up pop culture. Additionally, only like 16 Hollywood movies are allowed in China every single year. So releasing the movie there without the fanfare or without the nostalgia is only going to hurt it. And it has nothing to do with the skin color of the main actor. I mean,
I don't think Chinese people are going, you know what? Not going to see Solo. White people.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And then if you look at he's talking about like the demographic breakdown. It's like, Donald Glover as Lando Calrissian was a big part of the marketing. He's a decent part of the film, and he's really good in what he does, and people want to see more of him. And the thing is, though, I mean, I can to an extent see what Mendelson here is saying. Not agreeing, but it's like when I worked for theaters, we would get like a Tyler Perry movie coming in, and Tyler Perry movies are event movies for a certain demographic, and so they would sell out. They would do really, really, really well. And so, yes, movies that are catered to a specific demographic are going to probably do well. We've learned over the years that Latinos are actually the highest spending people in theaters. They are the ones that they go see the movies the most. And I think Black people actually go the least overall. But what it is right now, yes, with digital streaming, all these other aspects of it, it really does boil down to just there's so many options. And when like I said, there's also the fact that the weekend was really bad for movies, and also Deadpool came out the week before and had $130 million opening weekend, and then $43 million that it made this weekend, and so that had its impact and whatnot. And I did talk about that,
and that's why Scotty's wrong here.
And okay. Scotty doesn't know. And Scotty
hashtag Scotty doesn't know, because look at Deadpool. Look at how much money that movie made. White guy.
Yeah.
Ryan Reynolds, white dude.
Look at Avengers Infinity War. All white men.
Yep.
With the exception of Black Panther. And yeah, that's
alien
and Falcon
too, alien.
Well, no, Falcon and War Machine, but there were no Latinos in Avengers Infinity War.
You got Mantis, who's played by like a
Asian, and then isn't Dave Bautista? Isn't he Hispanic?
Bautista is definitely a Hispanic.
Yeah. So you got some representation there. That must have really triggered Scott though. So Scotty doesn't know.
Hashtag Scotty doesn't know, everybody.